Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, where we do our best to give you useful information in 20 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, 5-time Voice Arts Awards nominee, David Brower.
Thanks, Alan. This is David Brower with your 20-minute podcast. Our special guest from Colchester, England is Gina Gardiner, and she's a self-help, and it seems to me that would be an understatement. So, Gina, welcome to the show. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me on the show.
You're most welcome. Your latest book, Thriving, Not Surviving. I love the title. Where did that come from? And because, I mean, folks, she's a 2-time #1 international best-selling author, motivational speaker, empowerment coach, transformational leadership trainer. It goes on and on and on. I just want to look up the meaning of all those things, you know?
Well, I've been in the job of empowerment for over 35 years, so I've had lots of time to develop it. I started off as a head teacher, a principal in where you are,
okay.
Of a large junior high school. And I ran the school for 21 years and did that mostly from a wheelchair, having had a serious ski accident. And the gift of my disability was that I had to find a different way of empowering my staff so that everybody had a shared understanding of what excellence looked like, to make sure that my pupils and the staff had the best learning experience that we could give them. That it was a successful approach can be seen because we were on the best 200 schools list, that's Her Majesty's Inspectors list, twice while I was ahead. And I developed a whole range of strategies, personal and professional strategies, for myself and for my staff. And when I left headship in 2004, I started to use them with people across different organisations and different ages and so on. I'd always been a life coach, so I continue to do life coaching and working with people around relationships. And I work strategically with businesses. But what I discovered is it didn't matter whether people came to me for life coaching or relationship coaching or business strategy, that in the end, you had to look at their self-belief, their self-worth,
Sure.
to look at their relationship with themselves and others, to look at their mindset around success or failure, to look at how they manage change and transition. And, you know, for many people, they're successful and then to think, is this it? What was their purpose and how did they achieve happiness and fulfillment?
How do they define that? Because the definition of that has got to be different for different people, right?
It's going to be different for every person,
Yeah.
because our map of the world is going to determine how we see life in general and what's important to us. Our core values come into that. And so when I decided to write another book, it was, how do I encapsulate all of those things? Because lots of things that you see look at one strand, you know, if you want to be successful or if you want to have great relationships. But for me, I felt it needed the holistic approach. And so the Thriving, Not Surviving, the 5 secret pathways to happiness, success, and fulfillment, is a way of looking at life in the round and looking at how do you step into your authentic power? How do you be genuinely you? Because I believe that when people are being genuinely their best selves, then all of those other things fall into place much more easily. And I believe, too, that so many people are just about surviving. And that's not only around money, but, you know, that they are going through the motions in their life and that they are unhappy. Many people are very fearful.
Yeah.
And if you look at what's going on around the world in terms of politics and terrorism and, you know, a sense of lack,
Yeah.
I think many people are living from a place of fear, which is having an impact on their health, their mental well-being, their spiritual state. And so this was an attempt to really look at a holistic way of stepping into your power to be your best self.
How fascinating. And the other part of that, I would think, obviously you would know better than I, but I think no matter where you live in the world's the pace is so challenging. It's like we've got this immediate gratification thing going
Yep,
on.
yep.
We're pulled 120 different directions, it feels like some days. We don't have balance in our life, whether to go with our family or our work, our faith, our job, our dog. I mean, it's just got to be so overwhelming for a lot of folks, and you have the gift to be able to help them break through and start to understand those things so that they can empower themselves, right?
I think that's a really good point. The pace of change has never been quicker.
Yeah.
If you look at technology, my school was one of the first schools in England to have a computer in 1984. And it took up a very large desk, and it had about as much. Well, the cheapest, easiest phone has got a memory 1,000 times bigger than these BBC computers. And you look now at, you can take your phone and you can have videos and photographs. And I don't think technology is a bad thing, but I think we've got to learn to use it rather than letting it define what we do.
I agree, because we talk so much about, especially with kids anymore, and we call screen time. I mean, you spend so much, or they oftentimes spend so much screen time that they're getting distracted from what life is about. They're getting distracted from their family. They're getting distracted from their dog. They don't have time to go out and play. And my gosh, it's just that part alone has just got to be most challenging for parents.
I think that there's been some research that shows already that the wiring in children's brains, those that spend a lot of time on the computer or on electronic gizmos, is actually changing. My concern for them, and actually it's not just the children, it's parents too,
True.
That they have a better relationship with their electronic gizmo than they do with others. And if I may, I'd like to share a story with you of one of my clients. Very successful, have 2 companies, and I was working with actually him in terms of business strategy. But we started talking, because I don't think you can see these things in one strand. I think you've got to look at things in the whole. And we started talking about how life was at home, and he was saying he was concerned about his relationship, and that the children, they were quite small, 2, 4, and 8, that they were being quite naughty. And I asked him to describe their evening. And he said, well, I get home from work and we all sit round the telly and we eat our dinner, and then I'm on the computer and my wife's watching soaps or watching or on her phone. And the children keep on at us, will you play, will you play? And when we don't, they get naughtier and naughtier. And I asked him the question, have you thought of what's really going on here? That you and your wife your relationship is not about you two as people. It's about you being in a linear relationship with your particular chosen electronic thing, and the children are being naughty because actually what they want is your attention. Anyway, after
that's absolutely right. Yeah, my gosh.
We talked, I suggested that he went home and talked to his wife about this, and that they actually came up with an agreed system. And so when he came home, he had 2 hours with the children. He put a moratorium on clients and staff ringing him at home unless it was an emergency. He defined what emergency meant. It wasn't that he'd forgotten a phone number, but so that it was very clear. He had a different ringtone for family and friends to clients and work staff. And then he and his wife sat once the children had got to bed and had conversation.
Oh, my gosh.
And for them, it was quite a revolution. What happened is that the children, because they were getting their parents' attention, they read together, they played together, the children's behavior and their performance at school improved. Everybody's relationship improved, but what was interesting, my client had been quite worried that, well, what about the time that I spend at home doing work? I will be behind when I'm at work. But what he actually found was that he was much more efficient and effective at work, that time was not missed at all, that his relationships were better, he slept better, he felt better. And it was because he had decided to control the technology rather than just let the technology control his life.
I've got goosebumps on that whole story. I mean, that is, if every family could mirror just 75% of what that family has accomplished. I mean, going through the step by step to figure out how to put that puzzle together. Did you help them do that?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
And, I could give you lots of examples where we've looked at technology.
Mm-hmm.
I find it fascinating that people think that, the old thing of what's important and what's urgent.
Yeah.
And think about emails, because they have taken on a status of being both important and urgent in most people's businesses.
Yes.
But the reality is they are no more urgent or important per se than a letter that's come through the post.
Isn't that the truth? And when you have that conversation, in fact, I had that conversation with a good friend of mine a week or so ago, and because I received a handwritten thank you note. And
Isn't that nice?
Oh my gosh. I got like, oh, that is so simple. Why in the world am I not doing that,
They're getting as rare as hen's teeth.
Well said.
The other thing is that, you find that people will text rather than speak,
mm-hmm.
and they're across the table, or they're in the next room. So for me, it's about, we're talking about technology, but I think for the whole thing, it's about being mindful. The research shows that 95% of what we think, say, and do is habitual.
Sure.
It doesn't cross our conscious minds at all. We just do it because that's what we've always done.
Yep.
And I think, if your listeners are going to take anything from this, it is around start to be mindful about how you operate and challenge those things which aren't actually working for you.
And pay attention to understand what not working for you means, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
You've got to define some of those hurdles
Absolutely.
before you can take them.
But let me give you a tiny example.
Okay.
Tone of voice is one of those things that is often a trigger, a negative trigger for people. So somebody will use a tone of voice and they're immediately feeling that it's their mother or it's a teacher being very critical of them, or it could be a father or whoever. So they then go into their habitual behavior and they snap back or they're sulky or whatever. And then that triggers the other person and they then go into their habitual behavior. Mm-hmm. And so you end up with this action and reaction and reaction and action dance, if you like, which is actually nothing to do with the situation of the time, but it's all of these old things being triggered.
Yes.
And so you end up with destructive behavior, and before you know where you are, that something that was a very simple request or a simple statement has escalated into this huge row because people are not mindful about what's being said, how it's being said, and how it's being received.
No question.
And so there's very simple strategies and structures that you can put in place to help you be mindful, to help you avoid these confrontations and yet still confront the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Those all of those strategies are the basis of my work now, which is to help people recognize, actually, do you know what? You're 100% responsible for you.
Yes.
So how you feel, what you do or don't, what you say or don't, how you say it, when you say it or do it. And, that every choice that we have and everything we do is actually our choice.
Yes, it is.
Has consequences. And recognizing that sometimes just letting things drift and making no choice has the biggest consequences of all.
Isn't that the truth? I discovered something when my wife and I first got together about 16 years ago now. And we talked at the very beginning of our relationship about not stuffing things, because we both had been very successful at stuffing items that bothered us or we felt was bothering something else or whatever. And we, for the most part, we been very successful about that. But the thing that I discovered is that when my wife says something, and the tone or the look or the inflection or what have you hits me with those old tapes, if you will, that you were describing, then I stop and I go, okay, let's ignore what she said, how she said it. What are her intentions about this conversation? And so I absorb what I believe to be the real intentions. We let it pass, and then we have a conversation about it. And most of the time, I get it. I understand her intentions, and we're able to move on. But man, I can see what you're talking about. If you have the action, reaction, transaction, oh my goodness gracious.
And it's going on for most people in some form or another, both in their personal life and their professional life. And one of the other things I think that for some people seems to be pretty much a revelation is that because you've said it, doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's been heard and received. Right. That we assume motive when often the motive is something different. Absolutely. So there's a lot of principles that I think which, when you understand them and you've got some very simple ways of putting them into practice, it can really make a significant difference to the quality of your life and, of course, to the quality of the life of the people around you.
And if you can improve your quality of life to where you like yourself better, to where you love yourself more, then, I mean, that all is shared with everybody organically. It's like, wow, what did you do? How did you do that?
But you got to the very heart of it, because the relationship you have with yourself is reflected in the relationship you have with everybody else. Mm-hmm. If you don't like yourself, if you don't appreciate who you are, you're far less likely to put in appropriate boundaries. You're going to treat other people better than you do yourself. And one of the principles that I think really helps is to treat yourself like a really valued best friend. So if something's wrong, you'll say it, but you won't go on and on and on, like that voice in your head goes on saying, you should have done this, well, why did you do that?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I love that. And so are those pieces in your most recent book, Thriving, Not Surviving?
They'll find all of those principles in the book. They'll find lots and lots of free resources on the website, genuinely- and then the word you.com. There's a free 13-part TV show. They can actually download the book in digital form for free from the website. If they want it in paperback or audio, then they can buy it. But I want to get to as many people as possible, and so there's lots of free resources. For those who want to really work at this on this in much more depth, then one-on-one coaching, or there's the Thrive Together Tribe, which is a group of people who want to make a difference to themselves and to others, and to have some support in implementing these principles in their life.
Wow.
And find out that on the website.
And the website again is?
Genuinely, and then a dash, and then the word you.com.
The book is Thriving, Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment. And folks, please go to the website, genuinely-you.com, to learn more about Gina Gardiner and ways that she can help you professionally, personally, internally, externally, you name it. And yeah, I got to tell you, I'm a voice actor by profession, and I just absolutely love your voice, the tone, the texture, the way you communicate. I can see why you're so successful as a headmaster.
Oh, thank you so much. I have to say, I'm not surprised that you are a voice actor. I was going to say the same thing to you. It's a lovely, liquid, warm voice.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, Gina. Gina Gardiner,
And mine.
thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Listen to Your 20-Minute Podcast with David Brower on the go. Downloads are available on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, any podcast app, and on our website at davidbrowervo.com/Your 20-Minute Podcast. Until next time, thank you for listening.